Hello, everyone. Today I'm going to do a brief review of what we have learned in the third week's lectures. So in the third week, we basically learn how to hedge by using futures. So there are two main purposes of using futures for hedging. One is to short hedge, and one is to long hedge. Short hedge means that we wish to sell the underlying asset in a future point, and we wish to lock in the price at present. So long hedge means that we wish to buy the underlying asset in a future point, and we wish to lock in the price at present. So there are different outcomes of using hedging. For instance, if we take a long position in the futures market, and if the price of the underlying asset goes up, then we will gain. If we take a short position in the futures market, but if the price decreases, but if the price increases, then it will incur some loss. If the price of the underlying asset decreases and we take a long position, then we will suffer from a loss. If we take a short position, but the price decreases, then we can make a gain. So the idea of using hedging is to lock in the price at present. So no matter how the price fluctuates in the future, we are unaffected, but still there are some risks if we decide to use hedging. There are basis risks, which means that the difference between the settlement price and the future price on the spot. Also, sometimes we are faced with the risk of choices of underlying assets. So this means that sometimes we cannot find the exactly the same future contract that match the underlying asset we wish to hedge. Sometimes we are also faced with the risk of the choice of the delivery time, because for hedging purposes, if we decide to use the futures contract, the settlement time are fixed and maybe at the end of each month. But if we wish to buy the underlying assets in the middle of each month, then there's a time discrepancy, and this could cause us some risk by resulting in the discrepancies between the settlement price and the spot price. Sometimes if the futures contracts and the underlying assets we wish to hedge are different, but they are correlated, we can consider cross-hedging. So suppose the variance of the underlying asset is sigma S and the variance of the futures price is sigma F. So there are two different underlying assets for the first one is what we wish to buy, and the second one is the underlying asset of the futures contract. So we know that their prices are correlated, and the correlation is sigma rho sigma S sigma F. So the minimum variance hedge ratio, which means that if we wish to minimize the variance in our portfolio, then the minimum variance hedge ratio is rho times sigma S over sigma F. Of course, we discussed how to derive this hedge ratio in our lectures, and you can review. We also know that in the markets, the number of contracts are discrete. So sometimes we cannot achieve exactly this hedge ratio. So the optimal number of contracts that approximate this ratio is N star equals to H star times QA over QF. So QA is the size of positions being hedged, and QF is size of futures contract. Of course, sometimes we have to round it to the nearest integer, because the number of contracts are always discrete. And last, the textbook also introduces the stagger roll strategy. The stagger roll basically means that if we want to hedge in the very long future, but the settlement time of the futures contract will does not meet the requirement. Let's say if we want to buy the underlying asset in 2 years, and the settlement of all possible futures contract is 1 year, then we can use this stagger roll strategy, which means that we take a long position in the futures contract now, and we close our position in 1 year, and we take a long position in another futures contract in 1 year. We just roll our position. We just roll our positions in our futures contract. Of course, there are some risks, and you can refer to the textbook for more details. That's all of the reviews for what we have learned in the third week's lectures. Thank you.